Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to Unparalleled Universe for another action figure review, and today we're taking a look at the brand new Mezco 112 Collective Previews exclusive cable. And we're going to jump right into this, starting with the packaging. It's the typical packaging that they use for their PX exclusives, which is a metal tin, and it's very nice. It looks cool. We got the X logo on the front. It says cable up here. It says mezcotoys.com, 112 Collective, Marvel, all that good stuff. We have the PX exclusive sticker up here. On the side, it just says Mezco Toys. On this side, it says Cable. On the back, we get a look at Cable and all the awesome accessories that he comes with. And then we have some promo shots down here at the bottom. And nothing new here. We've seen all these before, but they do look very good. And this is a really cool container. You know, you just open it up. The figure's inside there. You can take it out. All that good stuff. And I like this a lot, but it's too big, you know, just like all the other Mezco boxes. Whatever. I cry about that almost every Mezco video. Hopefully they change it one day, but I do prefer this big metal tin to the cardboard one, even though it's big, even though it's just as big. I think it just looks cool, and you could use it for other things, like to store figures in there. If you take away those plastic trays, you could put other crap in there. So yeah, I mean, the packaging is nice, but enough of this. Let's take a look at the figure. Okay, so here we have Cable right out of the box, and I'm really digging this figure because I've always been a big fan of this look for Cable. This is the look that he had in the mid 90s to late 90s. I believe he looked like this during the whole Onslaught situation. I remember a comic where him and Sue Storm had to go into like this reality that Onslaught created to save Franklin Richards, and I believe he looked just like this in that comic. And then this is also the way that he looked in the Marvel vs. Capcom game, which is really cool. And another reason why I love this suit is because back in the 5-inch Toy Biz days, there was a Cable figure that was in this suit, and it also had like a removable face piece where you could like take off a part of his face and expose like the cybernetics behind the face. And then same thing on the arm. The whole arm was covered in skin, but there was this one little piece that you could remove and see his robot arm under there. I was always a big fan of that toy when I was younger, so this suit means a lot to me. I'm really into it. But let's go ahead and start taking a look at this guy. Right off the bat, you notice that there's a lot of similarities between Cable's design and the design of Mezco Cyclops. And the patterns on the suits aren't exactly the same, but they are very similar. You can see right here in the ab area, the X is a little bit different. And then in the waist area, there's a little bit more plastic overlays on Cable than there are on Cyclops. And then aside from that, all the patterns are pretty much the same. The arms pretty much look the same. The legs look the same. It's just those a couple of differences, and I can appreciate that. I like the fact that they didn't make it exactly the same, but they both look really cool. I like how they have like X's on the chests kind of hidden beneath the straps and everything. I think that's super dope. And one thing that I thought was interesting is that the sculpt on the hands are very, very similar. They're not exactly the same, but it's not like they reused parts from Cyclops for Cable. It just looks like they wanted to keep some consistency, so they made them very similar. You can see that the fist has that X sculpted on there, and they look very similar. And same thing with the legs. The boots look almost exactly alike, but Cable's look a little bit bigger. So I think that was an interesting approach. And I mean, I could appreciate them wanting consistency because that was kind of like the whole idea back in like this era of comics. A lot of the X-Men characters had very similar looking suits as far as their like Strike Force teams would go. You know, there was a point in time where all the X-Men had like blue and yellow suits, and then just like little accents to them to make them different. Like Gambit would have a blue and yellow suit, but then his jacket over it or whatever. But so I could appreciate what they were doing there. But let's go ahead and take a look at Cable. I think that he's a really nice looking figure. A lot of people have asked me if his arm is die cast, and that is not the case. This is plastic, and I'm glad that they didn't make it die cast. I think that would have thrown off the weight of the figure for sure, and it would have just made it, I mean, diecast gets loose. It's cool sometimes. It's a cool gimmick or whatever, but it gets loose. So I wouldn't have liked it on this figure, but I'm really liking the way this figure looks. And even though Mezco obviously took some liberties with the look, it's not like an exact translation of this era of Cable. It's pretty damn close, and I'd say that this is probably one of the most accurate comic to figure looks that Mezco has done. A lot of times they like to do their own thing, and I could always appreciate that, but in this case they stuck pretty close to the source material, so that is really, really dope. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a closer look at the details on Cable, starting off with his head. And I really do like this head sculpt. It's the exact same head sculpt that came with the standard release of Cable, and it does look very good. I like the facial expression. I love the scars on the eye. I love the way that the light up eye looks even when it's not lit up. I think that looks awesome. The hair looks nice too, but I do wish that there was a little bit more gray in there. But for the most part, I think it's pretty well done. Yeah, I like this facial expression. And it would have been cool if they threw in another head with this figure, but then I know people would have complained that they'd have to buy both figures to get all the heads, and that's a valid complaint. So I feel like Mezco's in a tricky situation when it comes to adding different heads to the different figures. But anyways, this one does look really cool, and he does come with an alternate head, which is nice too, but I don't like it as much. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at it here. And this is where, like, he looks a little bit more angry and his teeth are exposed. I feel like Mezco doesn't do the greatest job when it comes to teeth. But other than that, I think this face sculpt looks really good. All the details are nice. The hair looks good once again. The eyes are really the best part of these two head sculpts. But I would say that I like the head that it came with a bit more than the alternate head. So look at that. That's awesome. But anyways, moving on here. Let's check out all these straps. Look at the details on these things. They look really, really nice. They don't look plain or cheap or anything at all. I like all that. Kind of looks like circuitry a little bit. You got the X logos. They look really nice. Down in here, the little pouches look really good. And then he does have his gun holster. Let's go ahead and throw his little pistol in there. And that fits right in. It's kind of a loose fit. It feels like it could possibly fall out if the figure falls over or something. But for the most part, it works out. I like the details on the gun holster as well. The pouches on there look nice. And then, like I said, with the legs, pretty similar to Cyclops's. But they do look very good. The sculpting work is good. And yeah, the soft goods look really nice on this figure too. It's all very clean and very well done. Let's take a look at his cybernetic metal arm here. I really like the way they made it look like there's veins on his arm. That looks really, really cool. And I love the color on there too. It's silver with a nice black wash. And I was a little worried of how they would figure this out, but I think it worked out okay. Because, you know, you go from soft goods to plastic in an area where you're going to have a lot of movement. But I think they did a good job with it. I don't think that there's any risk of this getting damaged or anything like that. So I'm happy with that. Let's take a look at the back of the figure too. So more details on these straps that look really good. Look at that. You know, this look could be very simple, but they definitely put a little bit of love in there and it looks really cool. So yeah, that's about it for the details on Cable. I think for the most part, the sculpting work and the soft goods are very well done. And then aside from the two heads that we've already discussed, Cable does come with a bunch of other cool stuff, including multiple sets of hands. So first off, we have a pair of fists. And then next up, we have a set of open hands. And then he has a set of trigger finger hands that could be used to hold on to his guns. And then lastly, he has a set of tight gripping hands that he could use to hold on to his spear. So let's go ahead and take a look at these crazy ass guns that Cable comes with. Starting off with this one, it's very nice. The sculpting work is really well done on it. The paint work is nice, but I think it's the exact same gun that we saw with the standard release of Cable. And originally, Mezco wanted to put a light up feature in this thing, but it just didn't work out. That would have been really cool, but you know, for whatever reason, they couldn't make it happen. But still, as is, it's a very cool gun. It has a little removable cartridge thing that kind of looks like a Nintendo cartridge. So I do like that a lot. And like I said, the sculpting work on this thing is very, very nice. And then next up we have this one. Again, we've already seen this gun before, but it is very cool. I do like the colors on it and the details on it are very well done. So again, this is another gun that I could definitely see Cable having in the comic book, so I do like it a lot. And then next up we have his pistol, and this thing is very nice too. I like how it's not just like your typical type of pistol. It kind of has like a futuristic vibe to it, and it's very fitting for Cable. And with the standard release of Cable, it was kind of hard to get him to hold on to his guns with two hands. It wasn't impossible, but it was a bit of a hassle because of how big and bulky the chest was. That's not an issue here. He could hold on to his guns with two hands with no problem at all. It was very easy to get him to hold on to this. And then last but not least, the only weapon that's exclusive to this Cable is the spear. And let's go ahead and take a look at this thing because it has a lot of really nice details on it. It's not just like a plain spear. It has like all this like futuristic kind of mechanics on it, I guess you could say. Like all kinds of stuff going on. Once again, it's very fitting for Cable. So this is really cool. And I feel like this is a weapon that would have made more sense to come with the other version of Cable. But, you know, it's all good. At least it came out. So... And as always, we have the typical Mezco stand that's pretty cool. We got the X logo here. And a lot of times these stands get scratched up really easy, but I like with the X-Men figures because they have more things covering up the parts that could be potentially scratched. So that's kind of cool. And with this, you could stand the figure on the peg, or you could remove that and pose him on the articulated posing arm that he comes with. And just like the other Cable, he does have a light up feature. And to make that happen, all you have to do is pull his head off. And then you have this little weird... like canister type of thing that comes out, and you just have to flip the switch on it and you can see the light comes on. You put it back in, twist it, and stick the head on, and there we go. Hopefully you can see the light up feature a little bit, but yeah, that's awesome. And there's a little less going on than on the previous cable because the standard release had all kinds of lights and stuff in the chest. This one doesn't have any of that. He just has the light up eye, but it is super dope. I'm a big fan of that light up feature on the eye. Okay, so now for some size comparisons, and here's where I think that Mezco really dropped the ball on this guy because Cable is definitely undersized. He should be a little bit bigger. As you can see right here, Cyclops is taller than him, and I don't think that's okay no matter what. No matter what anyone says, I feel like Cable should be much taller than Cyclops. He's usually like a big, intimidating guy, and this figure doesn't necessarily capture that stature as good as it should. So I do wish that he was a little bit bigger, but I mean, he does look cool along with these other figures. It's kind of disappointing because how small he is. And then here's a look at him next to the Mezco 112 Collective standard release cable and the Mezco 112 Collective Deadpool. And a lot of people were complaining about the regular Mezco cable because he was undersized, but it's even more of a problem here because at least with this standard version, the boots give him a little extra added height, and the PX version doesn't have that, so he comes across as a little bit shorter. Okay, so next up we have him alongside a couple of Marvel Legends cables. Over here we have Cable from the Warlock wave or Juggernaut wave. I can't really remember, but it's a more modern looking cable. Over here we have your classic 90s cable that came from the Sasquatch Build-A-Figure wave. And I really wish that these Mezco cable figures were the same size as these guys because I just love the size of these two figures. They look really good. And if the Mezco figures were this size, they would work wherever you decide to put them, whether it's with your Marvel Legends or with your Mezco figures. I mean, it's not like he's so tiny that he doesn't look good next to your other Mezco figures, but you're gonna have to fudge some things, you know. And because I don't have any of those new awesome looking figure arts or Storm Collectibles Capcom figures, we're gonna have to go old school. So here's Cable alongside a Soda Toys Ryu figure, and Soda Toys they were doing some incredible things for their time. Those figures are really good and they still hold up. They're over like 10 years old. It's crazy. But anyway, here he is with Ryu, and then on the other side we have the Mafex Wolverine. And then here we have Cable alongside the Marvel Legends Bucky Cap and Marvel Legends Pizza Spider-Man, the Lightning Collection Green Ranger, and the Mythic Legions Purplor. Here's a look at him alongside the Mezco 112 Collective Magneto and the Mezco 112 Collective Captain America. And then now here we have him alongside the Marvel Legends Bishop and the Marvel Legends Sue Storm from the Super Scroll Build-A-Figure wave. And then lastly, we have him here alongside the Marvel Legends Strife and the Marvel Legends Shatterstar. Okay, so now onto the articulation. Starting with the head, it does move side to side. It's on a little ball joint, so it could go all the way around if you want. And you got a little bit of tilt to it. He could look up to about right there. He could look down to about right there. And as you might know, the articulation is pretty limited in the neck area because they had to make way for that light up feature. So it is what it is. In my opinion, it's a worthy sacrifice because that light up feature is really cool. And all we really lose is the movement at the lower neck that Mezco usually gives us with their figures. They usually have movement at the lower neck and at the upper neck. And in this case, we lose all the movement at the lower neck. And I guess at the upper neck, it gets pretty limited too, but at least you could still move his head around. And like I said, that light up feature is really, really cool. And then moving on to the torso, he does have a pretty good bend to his torso. So he's got a mid-torso cut and then a waist cut. And using both of them together, you could get him to crunch forward a pretty decent amount. So I'm pretty happy with that. And then you could get him to go back to about right there. You could tilt it to the side a pretty decent amount. So that's pretty good. And then you have some twist going on in there. So that's awesome. And then for the arms, we'll do his exposed arm first. So you can go all the way around because he does have a ball joint. And then they could come out to the side. And then you have the upper bicep swivel. You have double jointed elbows, which are pretty nice. Check that out. And then you have a ball joint at the wrist. So his wrist could swivel at the hand itself. It could swivel at the ball joint. And then you have a hinge. And then let's go ahead and take a look at the range on this arm, which is covered by soft goods. So I was pretty impressed because this arm could actually go all the way up. Look at that. And you really don't have to worry about the material getting damaged. So I'm pretty happy with that. But I would suggest not to leave him in a position where his arm is up like this for too long because you don't want to create like permanent creases in that material. But if for some reason you need to get his arm way up there, you can. And then once again, you have the upper bicep swivel. The elbow gets a little bit less on this side because of the soft goods. And then, you know, the wrist is the same as the opposite arm. And then for the legs, let's see what we have going on here. They can go out to the side a really good amount. They could come forward a really nice amount. Then they could go back. And I would suggest being careful when moving his legs forward because this material could get pinched inside of the joints in there and it could create some creases that you don't want. And then we have the upper thigh swivel, double jointed knee, which is pretty nice. Not really a swivel at the boot, but we do have a swivel at the foot. And his feet could come down to right there. They could come up to right there. And they also rock to the side. So pretty good articulation on this guy. And I feel like the articulation works a lot better on this version of Cable as opposed to the standard version because there's not so much going on. He's less bulky, so you could really take advantage of his articulation. But there are restrictions, especially in that neck area. But still, I'm not too upset with that because of how much I like the light up feature. So I'm happy with the articulation. Okay guys, so overall, even though this figure does have its flaws, I really like it. And to be honest with you, I think I like this one more than the standard release. And a big part of that is because of the costume design. As I said before, I have an attachment to this costume design, so it just does it for me. And this figure is a lot more fun to play with than that other one because he's less bulky, so you could get the most out of his articulation. And he's just a really fun figure. But if I'm judging this guy objectively, I would have to say that his size is definitely an issue. He should be bigger, but for me personally, because of how much I like the figure, I could look past that and I'm just going to enjoy it for what it is. But if that's something that you can't ignore, then you'll probably be disappointed with this figure, if I'm being honest with you. But, you know, for me, it is what it is. He's a little too small. I don't care. I'm going to enjoy the figure. So, you know, I like it. But I could definitely understand if somebody wants to pass on it because of how small it is. That does make sense because he should be taller for sure. And the accessories are cool, but to be honest with you, I think what they should have done is left out these big guns because we already got him with the other Cable and gave him an interchangeable arm. Because if you remember Cable at this time, he was really struggling to keep his techno-organic virus in check. And there was a lot of times where his arm was like out of control and there would be like crazy metal pieces everywhere, all kinds of stuff going on. I think it would have been really cool if they included like an interchangeable arm to display that. And because, you know, we already have these weapons, so we don't really need doubles of them. It would have been cool if he had like a big crazy you know, techno-organic virus infected arm. I think that would have been super dope. Or different weapons, but I do understand why they didn't put different weapons in here because then people would have complained that they would have had to buy both Cables to get the weapons. So I get that, but I think it would have been a good idea to have that interchangeable arm, and that's something that's specific to this look, so I think that would have been really dope. But yeah, man, like I said, he's got his flaws, but I like him and I'm very happy with it. So I think that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to comment, like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. If you want to support the channel, be sure to use the Amazon links in the description below, or you could buy an Odious head. So that's it. Thank you very much. Peace.